Hello my dear students, welcome to your Geography's online class. So in today's class, we will be discussing the topic, the origin of the earth again, with the three of the remaining theories, the electromagnetic theory of Dr. Hannes Alfvén, the interstellar dust hypothesis of Otto Schmidt, and the Big Bang theory. The last class, we discussed about three different theories. That is the gaseous hypothesis of Immanuel Kant, the nebular hypothesis of Laplace, and tidal or collision hypothesis of James and Jeffreys. So today let us first discuss about the electromagnetic theory of Dr. Hannes Alfvén. Unlike the three of the theories been discussed in the last class, which are mostly based on the gravitational attraction, Dr. Hannes Alfvén put forward his theory of electromagnetic force in 1942. In this theory, what he discusses that the sun, which was present at that point of time, had a higher electromagnetic field and its force greater than that of the magnetic force. So this electromagnetic force resulted in the attraction of the dust particles when the sun, with a high speed of revolution, or you can say high revolutionary speed, happens to pass by a dust of clouds. During its course of journey, it enters a mass of dust of the clouds, and there it attracts these dust particles towards it. Now this attracted dust particles, due to the magnetic force, started revolving around the sun, and as time passed by, they got ionized and formed like a cloud, which extended over the space. These very dust particles, later on being ionized, and as they started turning into the cloud particles, they collided with each other and resulted in the generation, or you can say it started receiving energy form, which later again got ionized itself. Now on being ionized and the particles turning quite large, the sun thereafter could not attract these dust particles towards it. Rather, now since they gained their own electromagnetic force, the dust particles turning bigger into size, gained their own electromagnetic force, and they resisted the force of the sun. And hence, instead of being attracted completely towards the sun, they started revolving around the sun as a part of planets. So this is how the planets, according to the electromagnetic theories, were formed. And in the later stages, with the formations of these planets, they again followed the similar kind of process in attracting the satellites around it. And in this electromagnetic theory, what we find is the larger particles, more of the larger particles were at the center positions, while in the smaller particles were quite towards the outward. Based on a similar theory, that is of the electromagnetic force, is the fifth theory to discuss about the origin of the earth. It is the interstellar dust hypothesis of Otto Schmidt. The interstellar dust hypothesis was put forward by Otto Schmidt, a Russian scientist, in 1943. And according to the theory, it suggests that there were presence of dust and ice particles, mostly in its gaseous form, which had their own angular momentum. And these dust particles were attracted towards the sun because of its electromagnetic force. And these particles started revolving around the sun in a form of disk. Now there was a redistribution and rearrangement of the dust particles when they started revolving around the sun. It happened in such a way that the larger particles, that is the larger dust particles, were almost formed at the center, while the smaller particles were onto the outward portion. Now these dust particles, as they intersected towards each other and then they collided with each other, resulting in change in their shape and sizes. Some turned out to be asteroids which were bigger in size, and then others, they just formed satellites and the planets. So this is how, with the electromagnetic force, or with the understandings of electromagnetic force, the two theories were put forward, that is the electromagnetic theory by Dr. Hannes Alfvén and the interstellar theory by Otto Smith. Now the sixth and the last theory to discuss about the origin of the earth is the Big Bang theory. This in fact is considered to be one of the most prominent theory in modern times to discuss about the origin of the earth. It is completely based on the fact that even today it has been understood that the universe is expanding. The expansion of universe is what was the main subject matter to be discussed as a part of the Big Bang theory. And this theory was completely based on the evidences that were provided by Edwin Hubble in 1920 about the expansion of universe. And then finally the theory was being made, or you can say the theory was propounded in 1950s and 60s, with finally the validations of the theory came in 1972 with the proper evidences provided by the satellite named Cosmic Background Explorer. So what the theory discusses is that some 15 billion years ago, the space had just one single point to what is being termed as singularity. Prior to 15 billion years ago, or you can say before 15 billion years ago, there existed simply a point to what is being called as singularity in the theory. Now this point or this singularity exploded this 15 billion years ago. It exploded, and this explosion resulted in the scattering of the universe. In fact, you can say the galaxies in the space. So these galaxies, as it were, been spread out due to the explosion that took place, also resulted in the formation of stars and again their planets. So these galaxies were all almost swirling, that means they had a spiral movement. And it is now thereafter, that means after the explosion, it is believed that our solar system was also formed, which was then cooled and diffused in cloud of gas and dust, to what now we call it Milky Way galaxy. Now this huge mass of gas was mostly made up of hydrogen and helium, which resulted in heat to be produced. Yes, it was also being made up of some of the other elements like oxygen, silicon and iron, but mostly was made up of hydrogen and helium. Now this cloud of gas, which had heat and as well as dense at the center, started revolving and also started rotating as a part of a disk, or you can say a rotating disk. Now with the formation of these galaxies, or you can say when the galaxies were formed, in the space, as time passed by, they started expanding away from each other. In fact, they started moving away from each other, forming various galaxies at today's time. With this 15 billion years of time, these hot and radiations, a fireball, in fact you can say the solar system that has been formed as a fireball, got expanded and consequently cool down. Now this 15 billion years ago, there was just this one single fireball, and later its explosion resulted in the formations of others. So this is how the Big Bang Theory discusses about how the planets were formed from one single point or singularity and exploded. With the explosion formed the galaxies. Now these galaxies were formed of various stars, and they resulted in the formations of planet in the later stages. So if we have to sum up the stages of development of the universe as per the Big Bang Theory, you can simply state that in the beginning there was one single matter to what we call singularity. Explosion took place, and this explosion, which took place some 15 billion years ago, led to the expansion of universe, forming galaxies with various stars and planets revolving around them. So this is how the Earth, in fact, the planets were formed, and Earth as a part of it and as a part of solar system had a similar formation as like that of other planets. So thank you class, and this is all about the chapter.